to a portion of scripture in Jeremiah 17, verses 7 to 8, in the New Living Translation, which reads, and I quote, "But blessed are those who trust in the Lord and have made the Lord their hope and confidence. They are like trees planted along the riverbank with roots that reach deep into the water. Such trees are not bothered by the heat or worried by long months of drought. Their green leaves stay green and they never stop producing fruit." End of quote. Mr. Speaker, the theme chosen for the 2014 budget is, and I quote, "Building a new economy through higher productivity and sacrifice for the benefit of all," unquote. This theme, Mr. Speaker, is consistent with our government's commitment to build a new economy. But it recognizes that government cannot do it alone. The elements of the new economy can only be built, Mr. Speaker, if everyone, government, workers, businesses, churches, and civil society rally together as Team Grenada. Yes, Mr. Speaker, Team Grenada. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we must rally together as Team Grenada. The elements of the new economy, Mr. Speaker, are set out in the annex of this statement. Mr. Speaker, the new economy requires that Grenada become a productive center of excellence. Over the past 30 years, we have seen productivity has fallen steadily in the entire Caribbean. This disturbing trend can be seen in the annex of this budget statement. Mr. Speaker, low productivity is now a heavy weight on economic growth and job creation. Consequently, we must raise our current levels of productivity. This requires, Mr. Speaker, a change in mindset and behaviors by the public and private sectors and all and sundry. Towards this end, our new National Productivity Enhancement Campaign must address lateness and absenteeism, which are chronic diseases now plaguing our country. Mr. Speaker, as I do not propose to speak for more than 2 hours, I will not read this entire statement. However, government's plans for the areas which I do not cover today will be on the record and available for all and sundry to see. Mr. Speaker, it is important from the outset of this presentation for me to speak about the philosophy of this new National Party's government. Next year will be 30 years since I entered the parliament of this country. Mr. Speaker, I did so for one purpose, and one purpose only: to help lift the people of our country out of poverty and to give them a chance at a better life. This mission, Mr. Speaker, is at the core of my being and why I'm in government. If those of us who serve the people of this country cannot lift the vulnerable and marginalized among us, we ought to question our service. Mr. Speaker, I have heard segments of our population, albeit a few, attacking some of government's social programs. Let me be very clear, Mr. Speaker. If there is wastage anywhere in government, we must address it at whatever levels. However, the voices taking issue with our social programs are noticeably silent on waste and fraud due to abuse of concessions or sick leave due to general malaise or high levels of absenteeism, or for that matter, the unproductive government estates, which are costing the state more than they are earning. Mr. Speaker, my concern is that these attacks on our social programs are not really about waste, you know. Instead, I believe, they're about the less fortunate being perceived as taking bread from the more fortunate among us. To put it bluntly, those who have some must get more, and those who have nothing must get nothing. Is that social justice, Mr. Speaker? My view, absolutely not. It is our sense of justice that informed our government's decision not to continue the free textbooks program to all private schools in difficult economic times, and I stress the word all. It is that same sense of justice, Mr. Speaker, that guides our decision not to continue with the policy of refunding all students who pass 8 or more O-level subjects. Instead, Mr. Speaker, we have allocated $1 million in uniform and transportation allowances to ensure that students from marginalized families can actually make it to school. Mr. Speaker, let me illustrate my concern with 2 more examples. The first one. Some are calling for government to scrap the debushing program because they see it as a waste of public resources. Those who are making those calls, some of them are benefiting, Mr. Speaker, from the resources of the state, either as employees or, in the case of the private sector, as beneficiaries of tax concessions. Yet, they demand that government stop the debushing program. Mr. Speaker, the people who make these calls are working all year round compared to the debushers who get a few fortnights, a meager few fortnights a year to help them put food on the table and at least enjoy a decent Christmas meal. Mr. Speaker, have we become so mean and selfish as a nation that we cannot find in our hearts to help those persons? Mr. Speaker, does government exist only to satisfy the needs of those of us who already have? Is life, Mr. Speaker, only about us? The second example, Mr. Speaker, is the New Imani program. There are suggestions in some quarters that government is wasting money on our youth, pointing out in some cases there are some who are not adequately placed and may be receiving resources not necessarily as optimal as it should be. And we have to correct this. But, Mr. Speaker, do the persons who make such assertions understand that if government fails to secure the future of our youth, we as a country have no future? Mr. Speaker, when I hear these harsh and, in my view, callous remarks, I ask myself, where is our conscience? Where is our compassion? Have we lost our Christian love? Mr. Speaker, I do not claim to be a soldier for Christ in politics. I wouldn't make such bold claim. Mr. Speaker, as I said, I would not make the claim that I'm a soldier for Christ in the politics. But the Holy Bible declares, and I quote, "Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of my brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me." End quote. Mr. Speaker, this government and all government must demonstrate that it cares. We care about the poor, and we have no choice, and the powerless. We care, and we have to, about the sick and the suffering. So when we advocate, Mr. Speaker, for smaller government, we are affirming our commitment to prudent economic management. That is why we have always encouraged contracting out certain government services. In so doing, we are reducing the size of government while expanding the small business sector. Mr. Speaker, that is why we are now on a campaign to reduce waste. By so doing, we spend less to maintain the government's bureaucracy and can invest more in people and the productive sectors. So, Speaker, as our economy grows and economic opportunities expand, people must become more independent of the state. However, the state must always help the less fortunate as a special case. I now wish, Mr. Speaker, to highlight some of our achievements so far. Mr. Speaker, when we assumed office just about 10 months ago, our country was in economic free fall, but the parliament of the country closed for more than 6 months. Confidence was at an all-time low.